Welcome to this episode of The Wolf and the Shepherd. Today I've got with me Kevin M. Brennan, actor, writer, and producer. Kevin's glad you can make it on the show. Appreciate you being here.
Yeah, great to be here, Max Millington. Good to see you. Good to hear you. It's been a minute since we've seen each other in real life, and I'm back home right now in Keller, and it's good to be doing this with you, man. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. On computers just across town, but hey,
That's right.
I know you're here in Texas, so we're
man.
Have you back in the Lone Star State, and I'm sure you're glad to kind of be back and see a little bit of hometown.
Yeah,
and see if,
very.
I know you come back home every once in a while, but you know, looking back in our days, way back when, it's changed a lot around here.
It sure has, man. I mean, I love coming home to see my folks and see all my friends and you guys and stuff. It's always fun, but it is definitely not the town that we grew up in.
That is sure.
Very different town.
Kind of alluding to that, you know, we've known each other for years and everything, but for those folks that don't know exactly who Kevin M. Brennan is, walk us through your background and what you kind of started out and what made you want to pursue this actor, producer, writer kind of.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it all in fact did begin in Florence Elementary, where you and I met in elementary school. Around like I'd say middle school or junior high, man. Like one of our good buddies, Russ Bodnick, he had a camcorder that he bought, and or his dad's or something like that, and we were always just running around making stupid videos. We always had fun doing, and then in high school, me and Russ and Matt Harshbarger started doing the video announcements for the school. So every morning when it would, air on the TV, we were the guys who were doing that. And we'd always try and make them fun and do like sketches around them. And we actually, cared way more about doing the sketches than we did about the announcements. And so we were doing that a lot. And then I was also doing theater classes in high school with Mrs. Lewis, and she was great. And we did the one-act play and all that kind of thing. So competition with that, all kind of stuff. And then also like in high school is when I started my first band with a lot of guys, and so I started playing music and, playing little gigs here around town and sometimes even going out to Deep Ellum to play the big clubs. So that was kind of all, where it all kind of started. And then after we graduated high school, went down to University of Texas in Austin. So down in Austin where I majored in radio, TV, film. So I got my film degree there. And that was, the immersing into the whole, history and, technical of cinema and all that kind of stuff, what you do when you're in college. And I was still playing in bands there, in Austin, playing a bunch of bands and doing music stuff down there as well. And acting, actually down in Austin was the first time I ever acted in a feature film. Yeah, because I remember I was going to get money from the ATM, and there was a little just handwritten sign on the ATM said, "Want to be in a movie?" And realizing now how dangerous that could have turned out to be. What kind of movie? So it had those little pull tabs on it. So I pulled a tab and I called the number, and it was a guy who was in town from Los Angeles who was making his first feature film, and he was casting because he was shooting in Austin. And so I auditioned for a part, and I got a part, and then I also ended up helping him sort of make the movie because I was interested in filmmaking. So that was, the first feature I ever acted in. And then after we graduated, I hung around Austin for a minute, just trying to make the band thing work. And I was living in this tiny little apartment and playing in band and like waiting tables and substitute teaching. And it was just not going great. So one of my really good friends, Kelly Williams, who he still lives down in Austin. He's a producer down there. He's a huge comedy nerd, and he was like, "Hey man, I'm going to go to Chicago and I'm going to take classes at Second City, and you should come with me because you're not doing anything here." And I was like, and I was born in Chicago, actually. We moved to Texas when I was in second grade, so I grew up here, but I was born there and I family there. And so I was aware of Second City, but I didn't really have an understanding of like what the theater was. I knew like SCTV, and I knew some of the famous, names that had come out of it, but I had no idea what the training center was or what, was going on up there. So he was like, "Let's go up there for a weekend. And let's check it out. Let's see what, we'll get a little, tour of the classes and whatever." So we went up there and we watched a show, and it blew me away, man. Improv is such like a known thing now. And not to age us and date us too much, but, this was before Whose Line It, Was It Anyway was on the air, which I think was America's sort of big, in a lot of ways, introduction to improv as an art form. Even though it had been happening, in theater circles in Chicago and stuff and for years. But anyway, we go up there and we watch the Second City show, and it blows me away. And we stay for the improv set, and I'm like, "Holy cow, this is what I want to be doing. This is amazing. I love this. I love they're making it up. It's so cool." And then we did like a little tour of the training center, and we were like, "Oh, there's writing classes or improv classes," and it's this like community of people who are all just making, you know, cool stuff happen and sketches. And I was like, I'm in, let's do it. So we come back to Texas after our little trip, and we start, you know, looking at apartments online and like getting ready to go. And I remember 2 weeks before we left, Kelly said, hey man, I'm not going to go because I just got a full-time job at the Austin Film Festival. Yeah. As like one of their head programmers. And he was like, and I want to stay for this because I've been volunteering there and I want to do it. And I was like, well, I'm going to still go to Chicago. We, you know, ran this apartment or whatever. And I grabbed our buddy, Michael Gallagly. We went together up there, and we drove off. The day we drove off was September 12th of 2001. So the day after 9/11. It was weird, man. It was very, very surreal. Very surreal driving like across the country with like no airplanes in the sky, and you know the country on alert. And you know, I mean, there was even a moment where we were kind of thinking like, should we turn the U-Haul towards New York and just go see if we can help out and maybe live there for a few months to be a part of like, you know, I don't even know what that means, help out, you know, or whatever. But anyway, we kept going towards Chicago, but yeah, it was a weird time. And then got Chicago, man, and that was a big life changer. That was lived there for 5 years. I started taking writing classes at Second City in Chicago at the training center. Started doing a lot of improv and doing a lot of sketch comedy shows. I started a sketch comedy group with some buddies called the Mantastics, and we were kind of doing our own thing where we would book our own shows and put up our own shows and everything. And you know, I'm not going to say we made tons of money, but you know, we made a little bit of money. I mean, we all still had day jobs and stuff, but it was nice. It was like the first time kind of seeing like, oh, I see how there's a way to do this. You know, definitely need a little more success at it, but here's how the needle is threaded in a way. And so that was great, and met a lot of my, like, to this day, like best friends that I have out in LA and guys who I work with to this day. And so, yeah, did Chicago for 5 years. That's where I got my SAG card. was in Chicago because I had a tiny, tiny, tiny little part in a little movie called The Lake House.
Well, see, you're kind of jumping ahead there because
did I miss something?
I remember seeing The Lake House with the wife.
Yep.
And so we're watching the movie, and you come up as the waiter, and I'm looking, I'm like, that's Kevin. She's like, I'm like, that's Kevin. I didn't know he was in this movie. And she's like, who? I'm like, you remember him? You met him years ago. But that's Kevin. He's the waiter. And that's when I reached back out to you. I'm like, dude, I saw you in a movie. It had been so long since we had caught up. And you're like,
yeah, man,
I'm doing the movie thing now. So
yeah. So that was kind of a wild thing. It was, again, I was in Chicago at the time, and they were shooting the movie in Chicago. And an old college friend of mine, she was the assistant to the director on that movie. And everything, like any movie that leaves LA or shoots in another city, all the main roles are cast, from Los Angeles with the big name celebrity actors. But they'll do all the little side roles of like the waiter, or like the valet guy, or like the doctor who tells them the bad news for one scene. That's generally that's local casting that they get from the city they're in, because then they don't have to pay to fly somebody first class out there in a hotel and all that.
Right.
So my friend who was the assistant director, she was in town and we were hanging out, and she was like, hey, so there's this part for a waiter, and if you audition for it, I'll do everything I can to tell the director to cast you or whatever. And I was like, amazing, that would be great. So I auditioned for it, and she pulled her strings or whatever. And I mean, not to degrade my own talent, it is only like 3 lines. So literally a monkey could have done it. But anyway, but it was a scene with Sandra Bullock. I mean, barely a scene. I mean, so but it made the final cut of the movie. So got my SAG card and went to the theater on opening weekend and watched it. And that was a big kick. And shortly. And I think it's a funny part of that story as well is when my shoot date was for that movie, my band that I was in Chicago called Decimators, we were out on tour, and I got the role, and it was like a quick, like, hey, we need you here for this shooting date. And we were out on the road. So I had to get a flight from Albuquerque in the middle of our tour to go back to do this one day of shooting. And then I got back on a plane the next day and flew back out and finished out the tour with my band. But it was what I needed to do. So then after Chicago, I was in Chicago, like I said, for 5 years, and it kind of got to the point where, and I think a lot of Chicago, performers and actors that feel this way is like, if you can make it in one of the Chicago theaters, that's amazing. And there's an amazing Chicago theater scene there and a lot of amazing actors. And if you can become a part of that in a regular basis, that's awesome. And then occasionally a movie or TV show will come to town, and well, shit, now they have, sorry, shouldn't say that. Dang. Now they have like Chicago Med, Chicago Fire, Chicago PD. So a lot of Chicago actors getting, work off that. But, back when I was there weren't all those shows. So kind of the best you could hope for as an actor in Chicago would be like, you're a part of a prestigious theater group, and then occasionally a movie or TV show comes to town, you get a little role in that, and you make a little money, whatever. But that's kind of it, and that's great. And I love that whole scene, but I've always, been really interested in TV and film and making TV and film, being part of that scene, which, back then, this was 2006, it's like LA is the place, I mean, a lot of production had started moving to Canada, like there was that whole thing in the 90s where a lot of production started moving to Canada for tax breaks. And that only became, more and more, and it's still happening today. But all the stuff with like Atlanta was not a thing then. That's not where all the Marvel movies were made, back then or anything like that. So it was like, yeah, you got to go to LA, or New York if you want to do even, bigger theater or whatever. So yeah, so in 2006, packed up the U-Haul again and moved from Chicago to LA. And yeah, man, kind of thankfully, I'm very, very thankful and grateful for this. Is I have a really, really great group of friends who I know from college and also Chicago, who had already moved out there. And obviously I stayed in touch with them. So when I got to LA, I had like a really solid group of friends I still have to this day, who we were all supportive of each other. And, it's everybody who's, trying to be actors and writers and, directors, all this kind of thing. So it's all people in the industry. Because man, I meet so many people in LA who like they move out by themselves and they don't know anybody, and it is a crushing city if you don't have friends, man, and especially if you're trying to do the entertainment thing, because nobody cares about you, So yeah, so I was very lucky to have a good friend support group kind of thing out there. And yeah, when I got out there, got with one of my very old Chicago or high school buddies, or sorry, not high school, college buddies, Todd Berger, and then a couple other Chicago guys, Jeff Grace and Blaze Miller, who we all met in Chicago doing improv in Second City. And we started a comedy group called the Vacationeers. And we were very, very early days of YouTube. And we were, doing our little videos. And at the time we had like a monthly show that we put up at this place in LA. And we would do these short films. And then we would do a little improv, do a sketch comedy. But really we were kind of focused on our short films because that's what we really enjoyed doing. And that was kind of our outlet. And back then it was like, Dan Harmon was doing Channel 101 where, he'd have people do their shorts and show them in a theater or whatever. And then YouTube came and it sort of changed everything. We're like, oh, we don't need to have a monthly venue to this. We can put it online and literally everyone in the world can watch it. So we started doing more and more shorts and just putting them online on YouTube. And we did this one short back then called Google Maps, which went viral, which back then going viral meant you had 1 million views, because there weren't even that many people looking at YouTube anyway. But we did, and it, it was featured on CNN in this little clip, and it was all just about like the creepiness of like, the Google Maps, like the camera, how the street view kind of like takes pictures of everything. And in our version of it, it comes inside of these guys' apartments and it like spies on them and it freaks them out, whatever. So anyway, that was like, on CNN and like feature or whatever. And then we get a call from Google and they're like, hey, we saw your video about our maps, software or whatever. And, we want to talk with you. And we're like, well, if you're going to sue us, we don't have anything. There's nothing to take. And they're like, no, we don't want to sue. No, we want to fly you up to Mountain View and we want to give you a tour of the campus. And we want you to meet with our geo team. And we're like, okay. And so they fly the four of us up there and they put us up in a nice hotel and we go tour the campus, which was amazing and mind blowing. And then we sit down with their geo team, and this was in 2007, I think. And they were like, so, hey, so we noticed when you guys did your, maps thing, our usership in Street View, the function on Google Maps, it spiked like huge. Like your video made a bunch of people realize we had this feature and made a bunch of people engage with it, right? So we were like, well, that's cool. And they're like, well, here's why we wanted to talk to you. Is because we have all these other maps features. We have something called Google Earth, which everybody knows what this is now, but back then it was new, where we've mapped the Earth and it looks like a satellite. And we have Google Moon where we're mapping the moon. And we have all these other little features. Like we have this thing called Google My Maps where you can make your own personal map of your life. And we're like, oh, cool. And they're like, and we'd love for you guys to make some videos about all these features. And we're like, oh, okay, like advertising. And they're like, well, we're Google. And at the time, if you probably remember those facts, their big thing was we're Google, we don't advertise. Exactly. Right? They were just a search engine that is for the world and for the masses, and we don't advertise and whatever. Obviously, that has very much changed. So we came home. They're like, you know, go home, think about it. You know, if you want to run some ideas by us or whatever. And so we got home. We were like, man, it was cool, and they were super nice people. And we, you know, who doesn't want to be in business with Google?
Right.
But at the same time, they're not offering to be in business with us. They're just asking us to do some favors, you know. And we kind of thought about that, you know, for a little while. We're like, you know what? We're not going to be Google's bitches just for no money. So we said, but they're a multi-billion-dollar, then now multi-trillion, whatever corporation. We're like, we got to get something out of this if we want to do it. So we hit them up. And we're like, hey, we know that you've just recently, this was in the news, they had just gotten into some partnership with Sony. And we're like, hey, we saw your partnership with Sony. You know, we do these videos, but we borrow a friend's camera, which at the time we literally were. None of us owned a camera. And we borrow a friend's HD camera. And, you know, it'd be really nice if we do more videos for you guys, if we were given a Sony HD camera to shoot these videos on, and then we'll send them to you guys, and they'll be in HD quality, and it'll be beautiful, and they'll be great. And they wrote us back an email, and they're like, this conversation never happened. And then 2 days later, a brand new $5,000 Sony HD camera showed up on Todd Berger's doorstep. And we went and we made like 5 more Google videos that they didn't ask for approval on them or anything. They were just, you know, we just did them, but we have a tone we want to do them in. And I mean, they're still on YouTube. You can watch them, but
do you ever think that when you sent that the guys over at Google, you know, answered the email and everything, and then turned around and laughed, said, we just got these videos for real cheap because we got one of these cameras laying in the back room we're trying to figure out what to do with, so we got to send it to these guys out in California and they're going to do this?
Bro, I mean, absolutely. And also, I mean, you know, you think about it, like this was 2007, and it's like that HD camera that they sent us, which at the time was $5,000, the like lowest end iPhone right now has a better camera on it than that camera. Yeah. So you're 100% right. They're like, oh, we can get more videos of you guys for, you know, a camera? Sure, great. But we were stoked, you know, because it was a really nice camera at the time. And yeah, so we went and did our thing, and we made 5 more videos and gave them to them. They were really happy with them and whatever. And then the real kind of trick behind it was we took that camera and then we made our first feature film. It was those guys I mentioned, Blaze Miller, Jeff Grace, and Todd Berger. Todd Berger wrote and directed the movie. It was called The Scenesters, or it is called The Scenesters. Me and Jeff Grace, we produced it, and then all 4 of us acted in it. And it was it was as indie as you can possibly get. It was before Kickstarter, it was before Indiegogo, you know, any of that sort of GoFundMe, any of that stuff. So it was us just literally calling every person we knew and being like, we're making a movie. Here's a little like investor packet. And also, if you don't want to invest, quote unquote, we'll take a donation, you know, or whatever. And we had like investment levels. It was like, if you give us, you know, less than $500, that's just a donation. If you invest anything over 500, that's an actual investment. And you could maybe get paid out if we make a bunch of money or whatever. And so, yeah, like Carl Henshaw, I think, gave us like, you know, $200, you know, like one of our good buddies. And yeah, we had friends like, you know, pop a couple bucks here and there. And then we had like some actual like, you know, big investors that like came in for, you know, multiple tens of, you know, thousands of dollars. I mean, but still the budget of it was, you know, minuscule compared to any sort of movie you'd see in theaters. And yeah, man, and it was ambitious. It was a ton of locations, a huge cast. But we had a great crew, an amazing crew that all like worked for super cheap and favors. And, you know, we gave everybody a little title bump so we can make it worth their while. But everybody's really, you know, excited about it, ambitious, and, you know, wanted just, you know, the whole thing to succeed. And we did it. We made the movie. It ended up playing a ton of film festivals, and it premiered at Slam Dance, which is like the redheaded stepchild to Sundance up in Park City, the more punk rock version.
Like you say, with some of the people that you called in for the favors and stuff, you gave them a title bump. I mean, that gives you more credit on IMDb, you know, and I'm guessing that's, you know, that's a big deal in the film industry to have all those credits, the acting credits, the producer credits, all that. I mean, it's kind of like when I look you up on IMDb, there are 37 Kevin Brennans on
That's right.
But there's only one Kevin M. Brennan. So you were smart there. I'm like, look at Kevin Brennan's. What's going on? But you're right there at the top. And you're like, no, I'm Kevin M. Brennan.
That's right. Well, it's funny you say that, because I mean, that's partly my doing, but more so it's SAG's doing, Screen Actors Guild. When I got my SAG card, no 2 actors can be registered with SAG under the same name. Okay. So when I went to register, they said, what's your name? What do you want your, screen name to be? And I was like, Kevin Brennan. They're like, nope, taken. And I was like, and they're like, they said, they're like, if you want, we can contact the other Kevin Brennan. There might have been two of them even. And then we can contact them and see if they want to, like, get rid of their membership or something like that. But they're like, but nobody ever does that. I was like, no, whatever. And then I was like, what are my options? They're like, a middle initial. And I was like, oh, I can be Kevin M. Brennan. They're like, yeah, that'll do. And I'm like, okay, that's me. And then when I got into the WJ, which is the Writers Guild, same exact thing, except there was already a Kevin Brennan. There was already a Kevin M. Brennan. So my writing name, when I write, like, officially, is my full name, Kevin Michael Brennan.
Oh, wow.
So really annoying.
I got to admit, I mean, Kevin Brennan doesn't sound like that common of a name. Of course,
You'd be surprised. There's, I mean, the one big guy who always kind of overshadows is there's this stand-up comedian, Kevin Brennan, who I think he's probably about 10, maybe 12 years older than us. And he's been around, doing stand-up comedy forever. And he wrote for SNL. So, and then when I was starting to do comedy stuff, it was, dude, I've had, like, my agents will get calls. Like, I got a call. Do you remember that Pete Holmes show, Crashing, on HBO? Did you watch that?
No.
It was like Pete Holmes, a stand-up comedian. He had a show on HBO for a couple seasons. And I get a call from my agent, and they're like, hey, man, we just got a call from Crashing. They want to know your availability to shoot, like, next Tuesday. And I'm like, dude, I love Crashing. It's one of my favorite shows right now. I guarantee you they're wanting the other Kevin Brennan. So I was like, please call them back and say that if they are talking about me, I will get on a plane to New York right now. But I guarantee you they're talking about the other guy. And they were like, okay, we'll check it out. And they just emailed me back. They're like, yeah, they wanted the other guy. I'm like, yeah. Anyway. But yeah.
You never know what doors that could have opened, though. They're like,
for sure.
Kevin Brennan out there. Let's, check him out. Kevin M.
Yeah.
Oh, he's a bit longer name, so maybe there's something there.
I mean, honestly, I should have just showed up and tell them, yep, it's me. Go be on set. So anyway, and also it's funny with that name thing. So another way more famous person, Danny McBride. There is another writer, because Danny McBride, he writes a lot of movies and his own stuff. There's another writer named Danny McBride. So whenever you watch a Danny McBride movie, it says written by Danny R. McBride, his middle initial, and then it says acting in as Danny McBride. So he takes his acting name as Danny McBride, and then his right has to be the other whatever. So anyway, it happens. Where were we? So yeah, so we make the Scenesters movie, and yeah, it plays a ton of festivals, like all over the country, even some internationally. And we got a distribution deal after we had our festival run, which is kind of the end game of any indie movie is you want to get that distribution deal, and then ideally make some money, but that's pretty hard in the indie space, no matter how you slice it. But yeah, Scenesters is out in the world on iTunes for rental and stuff like that. And first movie that we did, and then after that, I went and made a movie with my writing partner Doug Manley called Planet World that I'm very proud of it. But we made that all in for like $6,000. but we did play a bunch of festivals, and it's a crazy, weird, like slapstick kind of comedy. It's ridiculous, and we didn't find any distribution for it, so we just put it on YouTube. So if you want to YouTube that, you can watch the whole feature right now. But we played a bunch of festivals, and that was really fun. And then we did another indie called Holiday Road, which was like a bunch of our filmmaker friends. Everybody it was an anthology, kind of right when the anthology craze was hitting, movies or whatever, or feature films. And that was really fun. We got into a bunch of festivals with that, and went back and played Slam Dance with that one. And then we got to It's a Disaster, which is probably the most well-known thing I've been involved in movie-wise to this point. And that is a movie starring David Cross and Julia Stiles, and America Ferrera, and Rachel Boston, and Aaron Hayes, and then me and Blaze Miller and Jeff Grace, and Todd Berger also wrote and directed that one, and Jeff and I produced that as well. And yeah, that was definitely like a sort of a step up for us. It was still an indie movie, still money we raised, from investors and people. This one was a little bit more like, we started getting into more of like the actual sort of indie movie funding space with some producers who like they fund indie movies. That's what they do for a living, So we dealt with some of those folks on this one, which we didn't really do much on the Scenesters. And, obviously working with, some bigger name talent on this one, which, was amazing. David Cross is a comedy, hero of mine. I mean, to this day, and got to be friends with him, and consider him a friend to this day. So that was a huge life, event for me. And working with Julia Stiles and Rick Ferrer, and then Aaron Hayes, who I was watching all the time in Children's Hospital, amazing, and Rachel Boston, super cool. Yeah, and we made that movie, and then we premiered at the LA Film Festival in 2012, I believe. And then we started talking to distributors and got a distribution deal through this company called Oscilloscope, based out of New York, who've been really good to work with. And yeah, went to, I think, it's been on Hulu and Netflix and Amazon and iTunes. And, we had a theatrical release with it, a small one. It was like, I don't know, like maybe 50 theaters across the country, but it was fun, to tell friends in different cities, like, hey, you can actually go to the theater and watch this one, whatever.
I did get to see it in the theater, and
yeah.
if you remember this or not, but y'all also kind of spun off that live version that you held.
Yeah, yes, I remember.
And you invited me to that one night.
Yeah, man.
Got to see that. I remember walking in, and somebody comes up to me and says, yeah, are you signing up for the open mic night? I'm like, no, dude, I'm here to see like a movie thing. And they're like, no, it's an open mic night. I'm like, what has Kevin gotten me into here? And you're like, it's all part of the deal. I'm like, hey man, heads up would have been nice, because I'm thinking I could get up there and say something. I just came to see a show, man.
I hand you a guitar, and I'm like, get up there, dude, play a song. Yeah. We spun it off into a little live sort of interactive theater piece, which was a ton of fun. We did it at this brewery actually out in Los Angeles called the Golden Road Brewery, which I'm sure their beers are out here too. But they have this like sort of event space in the back of the brewery that we turned into like our theater, because the whole conceit of the the theater piece was that what you just said, it was like the audience is coming to this bar for an open mic night, and then everything happens and they're all trapped inside the bar, like there's an end of the world type event going down outside, and they all have to sort of be in there together, and the actors are like a part of the audience, and they're all, if you ever seen like a Tony and Tina's Wedding or like a Awesome 80s Prom kind of thing, it's like that interactive sort of theater stuff. But it was a ton of fun. We had a blast doing it. Yeah, you came out for it. We had some good audiences out for that, so it was really cool. And then after that, man, then things sort of moved career-wise for me, like, a little bit more intensely into the writing world, where me and my writing partner, we wrote these 3 features for Nickelodeon, TV features, called Lost in the West. And they were these Western time travel movies that we did that were really fun. And that was kind of our first like real big like paid writing gig that we had done, even though we had been writing together for a long time. And then that parlayed into our first TV, like proper writing job for a TV show on this show called Still the King with Billy Ray Cyrus, that was on CMT for 2 seasons. And that was amazing. That was such a blast doing that. We shot out in Nashville. I acted in it as well as writing on it. It was amazing. It was, my buddies I'd known for a long time, they created it. So it was amazing to work with friends, and we were, lucky enough to sort of get a lot of our actor friends to be on it, which was amazing, as well. And that was such a fun time, such a cool thing. And that show ended in 2017 was when we finished airing. And then since then, man, just been working on the projects. Like I've sold a couple TV shows to some different networks here and there. Unfortunately, nothing that has been on air yet, but it's, this is kind of the working writer's life is like pitch a project, sell a project, and like go through all the steps, and and hopefully it makes it to air, hopefully it makes it to a second season, whatever. So right now just in the throes of a bunch of different projects that are all in kind of those stages of like, all right, we sold something, now we see like, are they going to give us green light the pilot, are they going to green light the first season, like all that kind of stuff. So
gotcha. So perfect kind of segue into my next question here. So talk about your writing process. I mean, from the moment that little idea pops in your head, I mean, do you have like a room you lock yourself in that you say, I'm gonna, lock myself in here until I've got 10 pages done, or do you, take a walk on the beach and throw 5 rocks into the ocean before you start talking? What goes on in your mind before you start writing those scripts?
Yeah, man, that's
that
a great
process
question.
of going from idea to putting something on paper.
Yeah, so I mean, right now, kind of, and I think this is probably similar for a lot of people who write in the the Hollywood game, is you kind of have some projects that you're like, okay, this one's for a paycheck. And then you have some that are like, okay, this one's for me. And very rarely do the two intersect, unfortunately, unless you're Quentin Tarantino. So it kind of depends on, you know, which of the projects I'm approaching. Like if you're going to say, you know, pitch a show idea or a movie idea to a company to say like, I know that, let's say, Paramount is looking for a robot movie where the robot becomes best friends with a kid and they save the earth. I know that's kind of like something they're looking for, an ET kind of robot movie, whatever. You say, okay, what's my take on it? Okay, well, it's going to be this kid who lives in East Texas, and it's going to be a girl, and she's going to like have big dreams about being an astronaut, but you know, she's in a wheelchair, whatever the fuck it is. Or sorry, whatever the heck it is. And beep that one out. Whatever the heck it is. And you say like, oh, and the robot, you know, is going to be this, whatever. You're like, that's my pitch. So then you go to Paramount and you're like, here's my pitch on the robot with a kid friend movie. And they're like, cool. We don't like that, or we like that. Great. Here's your money. Go write that. Versus like, ooh, do I really care about the kid robot movie? Do I just want to go write that on my own? So the difference being, if you're going to write, and they call it, so it's called writing on spec, meaning like writing speculation. If you write something on spec, that means it's like, okay, I'm going to sit down because I want to write this movie because I think it'd be fun to write. And I don't know if anybody's ever going to give me a dime for it, but I'm just going to do it because I'm a writer. And you know this, Max, you've published books. So you know what the process is like in that sort of realm. Versus if you're not writing something on spec, it usually, at least my experience, has been way more pitch based. Of like, you're going to sort of think about the idea, think about where it's going to go, and then you go pitch this idea to the production company or the network or the studio or whatever. And then they'll say, we like that. Now go write us an outline, you know, and there's stages to it. So if I'm writing, so I'll kind of back this up. So if I'm writing just on spec, a personal idea that I think like, hey, this idea, whatever it is going to make for a great feature film. I just want to write it. I'm just going to go for it. I will always start with an outline. And that outline will take different kind of forms of like, you know, will I throw a little dialogue in there? Sure. If I think like, you know, I don't want to forget this funny line, or I don't forget this like meaningful like piece of dialogue, I'll throw it in there, you know. And then sometimes I will parlay into like, well, you know what, why don't I just write this little scene out? You know, so I'll have this sort of outline. It's like, okay, I know in this part of the movie, you know, this like big chunk of action is going to happen here, but I don't really worry about how that's all going to shake out. I know what's going to happen. I know there's going to be an elevator crash, and I know this person's going to die. I'll figure out how that happens later. But then after that, I'm going to write this funeral scene that's really heartfelt and touching and kind of funny because I know what I want to say in that scene. Okay, and then after the funeral scene, I know they're going to have like a post-funeral party where somebody's getting too drunk and there's going to be a fight. I'll figure out what that is later. But then moving on from that, blah, blah, blah. So, you know, I always start, like I said, with that sort of outline, you know, or call it a treatment or call it a scriptment, you know, some people call it where you're actually putting a little dialogue in there. And then from there, you know, I just start writing the pages because you then have the map and then you're basically just kind of filling it in with dialogue. And I mean, you know, to back it up even further as far as like, you know, wandering on the beach and deciding what, like, you know, what idea I'm going to write next or whatever. I think for me, it's like, if it's a personal project, like I said, it's like excitement based. It's like, man, do I really, because you're devoting the time. Again, Max, you know, as a writer, like you're sitting down at that computer for hours at a clip. And if you're not excited about it and you're not passionate about it, it gets really boring real quick. And that turns into a lot of pages that you meant to become a whole bigger thing that are now just something you never want to finish because you didn't really think it was a great idea, you know, to go down that road. So that's for me, it's got to be, you know, excited about, you know, how to get to the end of it and passionate about it, because if someone's paying you to do it, that's a different story. you can easily trade out passion for money.
On some of those passion projects though, I mean, have you gotten to the point where you're like, man, this isn't working? How much do you push yourself to try to get to the end? Or do you, you know what, I lost the passion here, I'm just going to drag it over the recycle bin and be done with it?
Man, I mean, I hear you, and I know, and I've, you know, I know that sensibility, and I have tons of friends who, you know, have, you know, folders on their desktop littered with like half finished scripts, and I get that. I don't do that. I haven't done that. I don't want to ever do that. Even if halfway through a script I'm feeling a little disenchanted by it or a little not as excited, I push myself to finish because I just can't stand to have that. Like if I'm gonna start it, that's what I'm saying. It's like for me, if I'm gonna start it, I gotta finish it. You know, that's not to say I don't have a number of scripts that suck because of that.
So what you're saying
But
is
they're all finished. They're all finished.
there's been some of those where like halfway in the middle, you're like, you know what, I'm just gonna pound the rest of this out and get this done so I can say it's done, and you
Yep.
that's what you did.
100%. 100%. Yeah, plenty of those exist. Plenty of those exist on my desktop.
So actor, writer, producer, if somebody from Hollywood comes in and says, Kevin Brennan, you've got to pick one and you can never do the rest ever again, which one would you?
It's funny, man. Like, well, you also left out the music part, because I've been playing music longer than I've been doing any of this stuff.
Sure.
But no, it's so funny, man. This question comes up like so often. And I mean, I don't think just to me. I think for a lot of people who, you know, are trying to do a lot of different things with their, you know, creative career. Um, you know, for me, it's really, for me, like, kind of based on honestly where sort of my career is right then. So for right now, you know, what is paying my bills is the writing part of my career. You know, so if you were to tell me like, hey, dude, choose one of those things right now, I would say, well, it needs to be the writing thing, because my
Sure.
last acting gig was an unpaid short film that I did. You know, that's not the greatest thing. So I would say right now, like, if I'm to be put into a box or whatever, I'd probably, you know, have to go the writing route. You know, certainly, like, you know, I'm saying, like, the music stuff, like, I still actively play music and record, and, you know, I love it. And I've been doing that since, you know, we were kids, and that's never made me a dime. You know, and that's something that I'm never going to stop doing, even though I know it's not really ever going to be a path to any sort of, you know, success financially, at least, because I just love doing it. But yeah, if you were to, you know, tell me like, hey, you know, you need to figure out like how it's all going to shake out career wise from here on out, one thing, I would probably say, yeah, the writing.
Well, okay, so let's put it this way. Google calls you up again and says, hey, hope you enjoyed that camera. Now, since it's been years later, we were thinking about you and we want to stroke you a check that's going to take care of you for the rest of your life. So we take the money aspect.
Ooh, yeah.
Now, which one do you pick?
I think honestly, I would probably still stay in the writing world, because I mean, I love acting, and I've been doing that for a long time, and, you know, but it also is a very, I don't know, you know, it's, I mean, the body changes and people, you know, like I mean, it's just, it's a tough career, even if you're being, you know, if you're taking care of money wise to maintain. I don't mean the body changes like I'm, you know, I'm being, you know, degraded into not walking or anything like that.
Right.
I just mean like, you know, it's when you're writing, you know, it's obviously more cerebral, it's more in your head, and you can tell any story you want. As an actor, there's a time when you age out of roles, you turn into a different looking, you're not going to play those kind of roles anymore, whatever. So you kind of get limited. You know, as a writer, you know, your name's on the page, and I can write, you know, a movie about, you know, a horror movie as much as I could write, you know, this movie or whatever. And it doesn't matter, you know, where I am in my life. You know, I could be an 80-year-old man doing that or whatever, you know, or I could be who I am now. So I do enjoy that freedom of like, writers can literally write whatever they want, you know, whereas actors are like, yeah, dude, you can do that role. And like, it's not really right for you to do that role, you know, or whatever. So it's a little more limiting, I would say.
What do you think about the old school studios versus now all the streaming networks? You got Netflix, you've got Hulu making movies, you've got Amazon Prime making movies, picking up movies, but also making movies. And then you got the old school studios. I mean, are we going to shift and see more of the Netflix studio? You know, Netflix presents this or whatever it is, or you know, and see some of those old like Paramount pictures. Are they going to start fading away? Or are they always going to have that stranglehold and just kind of change the way they distribute movies?
You know, I mean, this has been going on for years now, and I mean, I think if anything, you know, the revolution has already occurred, and it's still occurring. I mean, yeah, the streamers, you know, Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, you know, Disney Plus, Apple Plus, whatever. They are obviously, they've taken over. You know, that's happened. That's what's going on right now. Now, is it going to get to a point? I mean, because the thing is, like, Paramount makes a movie that they then, you know, sell to Netflix. You know, they can co-produce on it, and that's been happening for years, man. Like, studios have partnered together. Like Paramount and DreamWorks will make a movie together. You know, they made, you know, like Iron Man, the first one, I think was a Paramount and some other, I mean, not Marvel obviously was a part of it. They weren't Marvel Studios yet. But it was like a co-production. And a lot of those big budget movies are like co-productions among studios. So, you know, I think it's really honestly a little bit more about like kind of like what their sort of taste is and what you kind of brand them with, you know, like Netflix, I would say their original movies as of late, they've been these sort of interesting, like they'll drop something on Friday night. Like I watched one a few months ago, like Project Power. Did you see that one?
No, I haven't seen that yet.
It's like Jamie Foxx and Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and it dropped like and on a Friday night. I was like, oh, this is one of those Netflix sort of actiony drop on a Friday night with some names I've seen it. It's not a great movie, but it was kind of fun. It was interesting. It had like sort of a superhero vibe to it. And I'm like, oh, that seemed like a Netflix just drop it on a Friday night movie, and that's like a genre now, you know. Versus like
Netflix and chill genre, basically, is what
exactly.
Yeah, have something on in the background. Yeah,
exactly. Very, very well put. Versus like, you know, you think about like, well, then what does a Sony movie look like, or what does a Paramount movie look like these days? And I don't really have a good answer for that. You know, I don't know what like a Paramount movie is, but I do know that, you know, in just my experience, like there are, you know, what your idea is, or you're thinking about an idea to pitch, or even if you've written something, you will first call your agent or manager and be like, hey, I've got this idea, or I've got the script. First thing they will say is, oh, like your script about like, you know, the haunted restaurant. Okay, cool. Well, Sony doesn't want anything to do with ghosts right now. Paramount doesn't want any food stuff, so we're not going to go there. Ooh, DreamWorks, they want to do something with a ghost, so we'll go to DreamWorks, and then we'll look at like, you know, Warner Brothers. Oh yeah, Warner Brothers. They want to do like a ghost type thing, so we'll go there. So it's also like, what are those studios looking for? Which means for their, you know, bigwigs who are crunching the numbers, what do they think is going to make money right now? You know, and it's like, why does Warner Brothers think they can make money off a ghost restaurant where Sony doesn't think they can? You know, and it's, you know, it's usually based on the fact that like, well, Sony probably already has a ghost restaurant idea happening, and they're not going to do another one. Well, Warner Brothers doesn't. So if the Sony one does well, they'll do theirs. You know, it's all that kind of, you know,
kind of like the guy outside the industry like me. I kind of think all the, you know, studios are saying, we want sequel ideas, we want remake ideas, and we want sequel ideas, because we constantly joke, me and my friends, about how it's like every movie that comes out is a sequel of a movie or a remake or something. Totally. We've been bombarded with, you know, quite a bit of that stuff. So,
well, and then also, I mean, you know, a big ruling sort of thing is the pre-existing IP, the pre-existing intellectual property. So, you know, I know some screenwriters who they wrote their feature, you know, just as you would write a screenplay, and it was not getting any like tread around town. So what they did was they went and they turned that screenplay into a graphic novel or a trade paperback, whatever you want to call it. And then they sent the graphic novel trade paperback around, and they started getting all these meetings and all these pitch meetings, because everybody was like, oh, it's already a graphic novel? Holy shit, it's already existing IP. Wow. That means, you know, we know it can be a thing. So, you know, if anything, like, and you know, I mean, look at everything we watch right now. Everything we watch is like 90% pre-existing IP. And that could just be a book you've never heard of. It could be, you know, like a magazine article, or, you know, it could be a podcast. And you're like, oh, that was a thing before this? I'm like, yeah, because that makes it anything to sort of make the people who sign the checks understand that this could be a thing. That's what excites them.
Yeah. So in other words, what you're saying, they made it a thing before with some other medium and made money, or it is at least got some kind of a following behind it. So turn it into a film. We've proven that this back there before made some money, has a following. We put some money behind it, some marketing behind it, and fund a good film. We ought to make some money on it.
Yeah, and you know, and the money part of it obviously is in there, but also, man, like, you know, I mean, you know, your book, The Libertines, like, you got your motorcycle gang book, and if I were to write a script about motorcycle gang, and then we take that into the studio and we take your book and we say we're going to write something based on this, pick one, they're likely going to pick your book over my script, because it's like, oh, this book already exists. We know what it is. You know, Kevin's script over here, I don't know, in the hands of the wrong director, it could get weird or whatever. You know, and we see that Max has this book that exists in the world. And even though, and I don't know this, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, but like, I mean, if your movie is not selling, or your book's not selling 1 billion copies a day, which I hope it is, Max. I really hope it is.
Just shy of 1 billion copies a day.
Just have 1 billion. But even if it's not selling 1 billion copies a day, they somehow view that as like superior to something that's totally untested, you know?
Gotcha. Well, I'll my phone call when my books get optioned for that movie.
Keep selling 1 billion a day and you'll be fine.
So, with everything going on with COVID right now, I mean, you got to the age of COVID, or as you call it, the Great Sickening from the latest YouTube video that you got, which is great. Everybody needs to check out
man.
The Ancient.
Thank you.
From the Ancients, sorry.
Tales of the Ancients.
Tales of the Ancients. Yeah. See, that's why my books aren't selling 1 billion copies, because I can't even read my own handwriting right here. So, do you think because of all this going on that, writers like yourself and other writers are sitting there on a bunch of ideas and they're just waiting for some green lights to be lit when things loosen up and it's a little bit easier, let's say, to make a movie?
Yes and no. I mean, the no part is that, dude, like, I mean, yeah, when it all first started coming down in like February, April, sorry. Yeah, everything shut down. Like all the production shut down, whatever. People were in the middle. I mean, my girlfriend, Libby Wells, the greatly talented writer, she writes on the TV show Dynasty, that's on CW. She was literally in Atlanta, and they were about to, because when you're a TV writer, you are there on set when they're shooting your episode that you wrote. Gotcha. And they shoot in Atlanta, so they get flown out. And she was there during pre-production of her episode, so it's like, 4 days before they start shooting the episode. And she was out there in Atlanta and doing pre-production. And then the day her episode was supposed to start shooting was the day they locked everything down in the country. And she literally got on the last LA flight out of Atlanta to come back. Yeah, I was like, tell me when, I'll put gas in the tanks. I'll come drive out to Atlanta and get you. It's like, that'll be a fun road trip. But thankfully she got on that flight and made it home. Anyway, this is all to say that yes, everything shut down, everything across the world. But some things started opening up sooner than others. And right now, dude, like, production's back. Like, I mean, Dynasty has been shooting for months now. Our very good friend from growing up, Matt Harshbarger, he's a camera guy, and he's been working steadily, for months now on different productions, here and there. And all my friends back in LA, like, who steadily work, who are more like crew people, kind of who like go from job to job to job and don't have a lot of downtime. They're all working, like they're all just, on to things. So now, so a lot of production is back, and they're all, from what I understand, they're all being very safe about it. It's like you get tests every day when you go to work. They tell you like, hey, when you get home from work, don't go to the bar and, suck down 8 beers, like just go home, and people don't want to get sick. So they're being good about it. Right. And so that's been happening. Now back to your question of, are people like, oh, okay, production's back, we're agreeing on all these ideas. What's really kind of been, problematic for, I guess, people, with like trying to pitch ideas is when stuff shut down back in March, April, all the production companies, all the studios started having this backlog of stuff that they were supposed to start shooting over the summer that they didn't get to do. So if you're in a position right now, like me, if you're like going to pitch a brand new idea to somewhere, the answer is cool idea. We dig it. But we already bought 8 properties back in the spring. We bought these 8 scripts, these 8 show ideas. We're committed to doing those, and we had to pump the brakes on those. So now we're doing those right now. So we're not buying anything right now. It's kind of where it's at. Yeah. So all my friends who like, were more in like the sort of pitching, world of like trying to sell shows, everybody's like, yeah, I'm getting meetings and I'm pitching and people seem interested, but literally no one's buying anything right now because they have this backlog of stuff they need to do first,
Right.
So
yeah, makes sense. So got a listener submitted question for you.
Okay.
This is the only thing I didn't prep you on.
Okay, I'm ready.
The strangest thing that you've had to do to get a job.
Taking a huge gulp of water before that one. Let's see. Do I get to know what user submitted this, or is it someone I don't know?
No, it's nobody you know. Nobody you know.
I gotcha. The strangest thing I've had to do to get a job. Let me see. Trying to think. I don't know if there's been strange things I've had to do to get a job. There's been strange things I've had to do during a job. Should I do that instead?
Well, that was the second part of the question. So if there's anything strange that you had to do to get a job, what's some of the strangest things you've had to do during the job?
Sure, that's way
just
far.
Didn't expect that you were going to have to do for that gig.
Yeah. Well, there was a movie that I did in 2009, 8, 9, maybe 10, called Super Zeros, which was a ton of fun. It's a lot of the guys I worked with in Nashville on the Bill Sauer show. My buddies Travis Nicholson and Potsy Ponsaroli. They wrote and directed it, and I was like kind of a bad guy, and like a Biff Tannen kind of Back to the Future type bad guy. Yeah. And there was a little subplot in the movie about the main characters. Their job was emptying porta potties, was their day job. And so at the end of the movie, there's this whole big like porta potties exploding thing that happens or whatever. You need to watch the movie to get the logic of it. But anyway, there I was, and my like final shot of that movie, sitting on this porta potty that, I mean, it was not real feces, thank God, but it was, you know, like muddy water, whatever. And the joke was I'm sitting on this toilet and it's just blasting up and like, you know, flooding the whole toilet thing that I'm sitting in. And that went on like a number of takes. Just sitting on a toilet and having just like, you know, what is not actual feces water, but fake feces water, just blasting up the toilet into my face and into my body and everything. So that was interesting.
Yeah. So after that, in multiple takes, did they come up to you and say, "We got it on the first take. We just wanted to do this to you and see how many times we could do it to you"?
You know what? That actually did happen on the last take. The director, he's my buddy, but he was screwing with me on like the last take. He was like, "All right, one more time, man. And this time I think we're going to spray it right in your face." I was like, "What?" He's like, "No, I'm just kidding." And then more recently, which is actually, well, you know, just the holiday past, that we did this movie called The Turkey Bowl, which we shot up in Norman, Oklahoma, which I was just acting in. But it's like not high school, it's well after high school. It's about these two rival high schools who much later on in lives, like our age, they come back to play sort of their rival game as, you know, guys our age or whatever. And the whole town has a big rivalry. And that was a super fun movie to do, but we were playing in this. So the final whole part of the movie is the big game, right? The two teams against each other. And there's a subplot, and there's a moment in the movie where the bad guys, I was on the bad guys team, we burned down the good guys' field house. And we burned all their pads and all their helmets and their gear and everything. So in the attempt to make them forfeit, okay? Because they don't have any pads. So they come to, you know, they come and they're like, "No, we're going to play without pads. And you guys have to too." And we stupidly agree to play this padless game that's full tackle. So the final like week of shooting, the whole 5 days of the final week of shooting, it is a bunch of dudes our age who are playing no pad tackle football for camera. So, you know, we can, you know, it's Hollywood, so you're kind of faking a lot of stuff, but it also, a lot of it was very real. And we were like, you know, we had only 2 stuntmen on set for full teams of men playing football. So that was interesting because a lot of people got injured. We're playing tackle football, which was kind of crazy, but it was fun. Brian Hansen is the main guy in that movie. And I totally by accident, like I'm tackling him at one point, I gashed his face open with my hand. And yeah, they were like, "All right, medic over here, stitch up Ryan's face. Let's get back to shooting."
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, Kevin, it's so great catching up with you. Appreciate you doing
you, brother.
Tell everybody how they can find you on social media, your YouTube, all that good stuff.
Yeah, man, appreciate that. So Instagram, I'm Kevin M. Brennan. And then I also have my band on Instagram is The Irish Goodbye. And then on YouTube, you can look at that sketch comedy group I was talking about earlier, the Vacationeers. I just dropped a brand new, it's going to be for the next 3 weeks, series that Max was talking about called Tales of the Ancients, which is kind of a fun little web series that's sort of like talking about the COVID ravaged future and telling children what they missed out on. So that's going to be coming out on that YouTube channel for the next 3 weeks. And then, Facebook, I'm just Kevin M. Brennan, find me there, whatever. And is that all? Is that all the social media there is? I'm sure there's more.
Yeah, there's so much social media now, I can't even keep up with it. But we do have the Vacationeers channel on our channel as well.
Oh, cool. Sweet.
Well, so people can find it. So, well, Kevin,
man,
thanks for joining us on this episode of The Wolf and the Shepherd. And we'll catch you next time, man. Take care. Stay safe.
All right, brother. Thank you. You too.